Nigeria, Gabon, Cameroon, or the Democratic Republic of Congo? Which African nation will preserve the World Cup hopes and make it to the Interconfederation playoff? We're going to talk about all of that and more coming up next on the African Five-a-Side podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the African Football Report on the African Five-a-Side podcast. I'm your host, Maher Mezahi. And as always, this is brought to you by africasacountry.com. This week on the website, we have a really cool op-ed sort of exploring the myth of Christian genocide. Actually, that's the name of the article, The Myth of Christian Genocide in Nigeria, because the American government was talking about, Christian genocide in Nigeria. And we saw that they were very, very proactive in handing out visas to what they also thought was a genocide of white farmers in South Africa. We're going to see if they're going to extend the same gracious welcome to Nigerian Christians. Something tells me that they won't. But it's just really forensically examining those claims. And if you're interested in that article, you can find a link to in the description below the video. If not, if you're just here to talk about these next 3 matches on the African continent that will determine which African representative will go to the Interconfederation playoffs, then you've come to the right place. Before we start breaking down the matches one by one, I think the most important thing is to talk about the playoffs as a whole. And I think this is going to be my favorite part of World Cup qualifying, because for the longest period of time, ever since I can remember, World Cup qualifying and AFCON qualifying, but particularly World Cup qualifying, it meant so much and it was always so stressful and it was full of drama. Some of the best times I've ever had as a supporter were watching World Cup qualifying matches, in particular that 2010 World Cup qualifying campaign from Algeria. Because places were so restricted, because the competition was so high, and it often came down to playoffs themselves. That's what, for me, filled me with the most joy, and knowing that you're probably not going to win a World Cup, but if you know the feeling, if you've ever been away from a World Cup for 10, 20, 30 years, and then your team finally qualifies, for one of 5 places, that's, again, one of the greatest feelings that you can feel as a football supporter. And this is kind of like a throwback to that, to the more exciting version of African World Cup qualifying. Everything is on the line. You're going to play 90 minutes and 90 minutes. There's no home crowd. And for me, this makes it even more, not more exciting, but even more competitive, that there's no home crowd to lean on. There's no second leg to fix any mistakes. Really, this is all decided in the Emerald pitch. The matchups are interesting as well, because we have 2 heavyweights in Nigeria and Cameroon, teams that are used to qualifying for the World Cup, particularly in the 21st century and in the late 20th century. We also have, they're going up against 2 well-functioning teams in DR Congo and Gabon, teams that are probably in the most form of any of those 4 teams remaining. We would say that DR Congo, since the last AFCON, have been practically spotless, and Gabon have had the best World Cup qualifying campaign out of any of these 4 teams. And then Nigeria and Cameroon, much, much, much more dysfunctional, but then they have that football heritage behind them, and they have probably more talented squads as well. So fascinating matchups. And let's start with Nigeria versus Gabon. So there have been 9 meetings in total between these 2 sides, and Nigeria have dominated. They've won 5 and drawn 3. I think Gabon have only won 1, and that was in the 1990 World Cup qualifying campaign. So that's the first thing to mention, is that Nigeria historically have the advantage. And spoiler alert, it's the same thing with Cameroon. I think DR Congo have never beaten Cameroon in a match like this. They've only beaten them in the African Nations Championship, which of course isn't World Cup qualifying or anything nearly as important. The other thing that we have to talk about in terms of pre-match notes is that Confederation of African Football appointed a South African referee, whose name is Tom. I lost it right here. But they appointed a South African referee, and Nigeria were very incensed by this, because the South African Minister of Sport, who is a very exuberant, loud personality, I think he said after South Africa had qualified to the World Cup that he very openly and publicly that he doesn't want Nigeria to qualify for the World Cup. I'm assuming this because of the rivalry that they have. It's not, the worst thing in the world to say, but the Nigerian Federation says, well, he's the sports minister. Technically, South African referees can fall under his umbrella. He can have influence on them. So if he's saying that, then we don't want a South African referee. I can understand their complaint. I don't think the South African referee would have been biased, but I can understand that complaint simply because a minister should not be making statements like that. Let's take it down team by team now. So Nigeria, Eric Shell, we have to take a moment and appreciate the Nigerian coach, the French, Malian Nigerian coach, Eric Shell. 9 games, 6 victories, 3 draws. And in the last 6 matches of qualifying, 4 victories and 2 draws. And he came into a situation where the national team was a mess. Because remember, they went from Pesero to, why am I always forgetting? He was at Enyimba, Nigerian legend. It's not Sunday Elise. It's always forgetting. I'm so sorry. It's not Emmanuel Emenike. Finidi George. So from Jose Pissarro to Finidi George to Augustin Aguavon. And so we had a huge amount of coaching instability. World Cup qualifying had gotten off to a horrific start. They bring him in as a sort of, fireman, put out the fire. And he does exactly that. Now, I do think that some of the credit that he has, that we give him, should be mitigated, because if you look at Nigeria's results with Victor Osimhen and without Victor Osimhen, there's a very, very clear linear correlation. When Osimhen is on the pitch, they always win the matches. When Osimhen either comes off the pitch or doesn't play at all, that's when they start drawing and losing matches. So some of the credit, I think, should be mitigated and deferred to Victor Osimhen. But we weren't really sure about Eric Shell coming into this job. I kind of knew that he had a reputation for being tough on his players, that he was very much a man manager. He obviously had a great African Cup of Nations with Mali, where they were eliminated in was it the semifinals or the quarterfinals? I think it was the quarterfinals against the host Cote d'Ivoire. Remember, they were up 1-0 and they were up a man as well. They had 11 men going up against 10 men. At Cote d'Ivoire scored 2 goals in the dying stages of the match, one in the 89th minute and then one in extra time to continue on to the semifinals. But still, that was the best performance that Mali had had in a decade. And so people really felt good about that AFCON performance. But then, he goes and he takes on a job at the club in Algeria. Doesn't really have great results there, but who does, especially at that Chembala club, MC Oran. That's probably the most dysfunctional club in Algeria, even though they're doing very good this season. But this Nigeria job, particularly if he sees it through and takes them to the World Cup, is going to really cement his reputation on the African continent. I think it's going to be very easy for him to find jobs in the future. Because again, he came in and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. And oftentimes without being paid, there's salary arrears and everything. So you could just really tip our hat to him. Now, as for the match, what do I need Nigeria to do here? What can be the tactics where they can beat Gabon? First of all, I think they should play players in their position. I don't think you should go back to that 4-4-2 that they experimented with in the last window with Tolu Orekadare and Victor Osimhen as the 2 strikers. I think just go back to a 4-3-3. And the main reason for me is that I need Ademola Lookman to play in his position. And his position that he's most comfortable with is left wing, but not really hugging the touchline. It's left wing, playing in that half space, where he can receive the ball on a half turn and where he can play in close proximity to Victor Osimhen and benefit from the flick-ons and things like that. So I think play your best players in their best positions. That means to me, Lookman and Osimhen. And then I don't know who you're going to play on the right wing. It can be, I guess, Moses Simon, even though I know he's more comfortable on the left wing. It could be Samuel Chukwueze, who I thought had a good international window last time around. But play your best players in their best positions. 4-3-3. Frank Onyeka probably deserves to start after he scored that goal that got Nigeria to where they are here. Without his last-minute goal in the last match against Benin, Nigeria wouldn't be where they are now. So him, probably Ndidi and Iwobi in midfield. But for me, and this is going to be the key for the match, and this is why I'm going to foreshadow a little bit, but I'm going to pick Nigeria to beat Gabon in advance. I think the main, where this match is going to be decided is Nigeria's defense versus Gabon's attack. And I think that Nigeria are better suited to take on Gabon than vice versa. When you talk about who's been the most impressive defender for Nigeria over the last 2-3 months, it's been Benjamin Frederick, the 20-year-old center half / right back that's playing in Dender in Belgium. He's been, alongside Mbokazi, one of the most impressive young African defenders on the continent. If he plays right back, and I expect him to, he's going to be on Gabon's best player, Denis Bouanga. Denis Bouanga has more experience. He's had a better year. He's been nominated for CAF African Player of the Year. Um, but I do think that Benjamin Frederick I think he's up to the task. And he's physical and he isn't scared, of Denis Bouanga. Again, sometimes when you take on one of the best players on the continent, it helps to put a young player on him, a young player that doesn't know what they don't know, a young player that really wants to prove themselves by having a great performance against one of the best players on the continent. So I think that Benjamin Frederick, Nigeria will feel very good about putting up against Denis Bouanga. Uh, and then the other thing is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. The way he's really been scoring goals this season, the way he's been threatening is by getting in behind defenses, using his pace, even at his advanced age, to sneak in. He does it sneakily. He does not just like outrunning. He can do that as well, but just very sneaky with the way he gets in behind defenders. And again, I think Calvin Bassey, I think here, like the center half combination of whether it's Calvin Bassey and whether it's Ajayi or Trusticon, whoever is going to be the other center half, they both need to make sure that they do a good job of marking Aubameyang. Bassey has the physical tools in particular to completely shut him out, whether it's in the air. He's probably faster, in my opinion, than Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang as well. And Trusticon has the intelligence, the positioning, the communication. Even though he hasn't had a great World Cup qualifying campaign, I think I would start him in this match just because I think mentally he can match up to Aubameyang. So if you're taking away those two players who are Gabon's best two players, I don't really see how Gabon can hurt you. And that's why I think Nigeria are better suited going up against Gabon. Let's talk about Gabon. And if we give Eric Schell credit, then we also need to give Thierry Muyuma a lot of credit as well. Maybe one of the more underrated coaches on the African continent. He's been in charge for 20 matches. And when he took on the job, you have to understand the political context of the country at the time. The long reign of the Bongos, Omar Bongo and then Ali Bongo, sort of came to a screeching halt. There's a coup d'etat that happens. Brice Ngema, who's actually a cousin of the Bongo, of Ali Bongo, but he's part of the military, comes in. And here, when the military comes in, usually the snap reaction is, we're going to internalize everything. We're going to focus on local politics, because the Bongos, especially in the mid-2010s, especially Ali Bongo, very much well known for throwing money out and bringing in, European, strong relationship with France, la France Afrique. Lionel Messi came and he posed 1 stone for a footballing academy, and I think he took home, I think it was between $1 and $3 million just for one day. He came in, shook some hands, kissed some babies, symbolically placed the cornerstone for a footballing academy, and left with millions of dollars that Gabonese people obviously quite desperately needed. That kind of waste, these are the kinds of things that can get you sort of deposed in a coup d'etat. And that kind of waste was immediately shut down. So what did they do? The government, the Ministry of Sport, they looked for a local solution, and they found us a local solution. Thierry Muyuma, he's the best Gabonese candidate for the job. In 20 matches since he took over that job, he's only lost to Senegal, and that was in a friendly, Cote d'Ivoire, Morocco, and Niger. But Niger was also a friendly. That's his worst result. But if you take that Niger one out, Cote d'Ivoire, Morocco, and Senegal, okay, there's absolutely no shame in losing to those 3 sides, which are probably the 3 best sides on the African continent at the moment. So he helped them qualify to the AFCON, and now he has them on the verge, perhaps, of qualifying for the World Cup. I watched his press conference a few days ago that he had in Libreville before they flew out to Morocco, and I was really impressed, actually, listening to him. Number one, he pointed out, and I think it's only relevant that we mention this, the Gabonese league has not really been fully functioning since COVID. It's been like 4 or 5 years. So not only did he come in, but like he also does not really have a pool, a local domestic pool to draw from, where players are playing competitive matches week in, week out. That's a huge, huge disadvantage. He's really been focusing on players from the diaspora, players that have already left the country and are playing competitive matches abroad, or young players in the Gabonese league that he's sort of having to call up and work with them as well. So he deserves credit for that. He also deserves credit. He's searching all over the world. He's searching for players in America, searching for players in the most obscure countries. Um, if you look at their squad list, you're gonna see players playing in every single league all over the world. Um, but also when he came in, he's sort of known as a disciplinarian, and he pretty much discarded all of the senior players except for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And he started getting results. And if you do this, it can go one of two ways. If you get good results, it's going to work out, and you're going to see it worked out for Muyama. If you get bad results, you're very close to probably being sacked. So he does this, and then eventually they get good results, and Aubameyang reaches out to the coach and he says, "Coach, look, can we get the senior players back?" And what we have now is like the return of I've never watched the Avengers, but I'm assuming they say like the Infinity Stones or whatever. All of the main senior players have come back, like Mario Lamina, Andre Biogopoko, Didier Ndong, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, of course, Denny Bouanga, Jimmy Alavi. It's like one of those teams, if you go look at them, Bruno Kwalemanga, it's like a similar team to what they've been playing with since 2012, 2017. These are the same players that were there. So it's like a return of all the experienced players that some of them were discarded. And they said, you know what? Okay, coach, we'll buy into your methodology, into how you want to do things. And now he has the credibility of saying, I can do it without you. And now they've come back and they're following him. And now he has even more strength in that sense. Also, in that press conference, Muyuma perfectly analyzed Victor James Osimhen. I'm going to give him a unique name, Victor King James Osimhen. That's what we're calling him from now on in this podcast. He deserves it. But he really analyzed him perfectly, saying, you know, Osimhen is a player that loves spaces behind the defense. We have to stop him from making runs. The problem is the only way you can really stop him from making those runs in behind the defense is if you're in a low block. And for me, that means that Gabon is probably looking to play defensively against Nigeria and try to hit them on the counterattack. So that's an interesting signal that Thierry Muyuma sent. Sucks for him that Jimmy Alavina is out. Jimmy Alavina is the best right wing option they have. So they have Denny Bouanga on the left wing, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a striker, and Jimmy Alavina on the right wing. No Alavina, no Babika, two significant injuries. And they've played different formations. They played a 3-5-2, but I think the team, like Nigeria, is more suited to a 4-3-3, and I think therefore Muyama will play a 4-3-3 here. So yeah, there's a little bit of a last dance feel about this team. You know, Akwele Manga, again, the central defender, the captain, alongside Aubameyang, the vice captain. He's been here, again, like since 2010, these guys. And they're still, you know, but initially I said, you know, Nigeria are well suited to take on the Gabonese attack. Another reason why I'm picking Nigeria in this match, I don't think the Gabonese defense are well suited to take on Nigeria, because Akwele Manga, very experienced center half, but he's lost a step. He's in his mid-30s. He's not, you know, he's had injuries. He's not as fast and as explosive as he once was. So somebody like that needs to have the game of the life against Victor King James Osimhen. The favor are in the odds of Osimhen. Again, especially if Osimhen has the space to sort of exploit. So I think they're poorly matched, in my opinion. Gabon are, because Manga is like a good center half. He's strong. He's not as fast anymore. Osimhen can match his strength, but will outpace him for sure. So my prediction, I actually think that this is going to be a convincing Nigeria victory. I think Nigeria is going to win this match 3-1. I don't trust Nigeria, to be completely honest, but I think they match up well, personnel to personnel, and that's why I'm taking them in this match. Cameroon versus the Democratic Republic of Congo. Again, we have a heavyweight in Cameroon versus a well-functioning team in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The problem for Cameroon is that the dysfunction is following them, you know, into the international window. There's the newest scandal is that the coach, Marc Brice, the Belgian coach, he released a squad list. The federation didn't want to publish it because they wanted him to come to Yaoundé and have a press conference in front of the local media and then announce it to the television, like Thierry Muyuma did in Gabon. And Marc Brice was like, no, I'm not doing that. You can, if you want, we'll have a press conference in Morocco, but I'm going to go directly to Morocco. I'm not going to go from where I am in Europe to Cameroon to go to Morocco. And it's just an ego thing. It's like, is that a big deal? For me, it's not a huge deal. Should he have done it? Probably. But now it's just like an ego thing between him and, the federation and Eto. It's like, I want to do it this way. No, I want to do it this way. Well, then, I'm not letting you do this and I'm not letting you do that. And the problem is it's affecting the players. There's even, uh, a Cameroonian player that currently plays for Bayer Leverkusen, whose name I'm blanking on, who's a striker, who posed with Samuel Eto'o. And I think Eto'o wanted to call him up 2 times, but Mark Ruiz just refused to call him up because, again, ego tripping, even though he's a very good player. That's a striker, I believe, as well. Christian Kofane. So Christian Kofane this year played 9 matches as a forward for Leverkusen, 2 goals, 1 assist in those 9 matches. Player that they could probably use. Seems like to be a useful player, but because Eto'o went and visited him and posed for a photo with him, Mark Brees probably doesn't feel like he needs him, and as a result, you have this complete dysfunction between the federation and the ministry. It's following them into the international window, and it's crazy to me that both sides are deciding to, put their egos and put the power tripping over a potential qualifying World Cup qualifying place. To add to that, Danny Namaso, who's a different kind of player that Cameroon already have, a more technical forward. He's injured, so he's not here. Um, the good news for Cameroon is that Vincent Aboubakar, who in the last international window, really at the worst time, against Cape Verde, when the match that they needed, he was without a club for the entire beginning of the season. He signed to a club in, I believe it's Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan, one of those two. And he scored 4 goals and 1 assist in his 3 matches that he's played so far. So he's come back. Obviously, he's still in form. He never lost his physical fitness. And now you have a talisman, the second leading goal scorer of all time for your national team, a player that you've been able to rely on big occasions, a player that scored in an AFCON final in 2017, a player that's led the AFCON in scoring in 2022. He's back, and it seems like he's fit and ready to go. So that's good news for Cameroon. Andre Frank Zambongisa voted Serie A Player of the Year for midfield for Napoli 2 months ago, in great form. But a little bit of controversy here as well. There are some whispers coming out now that Napoli are putting pressure on him and that he might not show up to the African Cup of Nations. So I just wondered, because trust me, the Cameroonian public have heard that, and he knows that the Cameroonian public know. And I just wonder what kind of spirit he's in coming into this international window as well. But overall, if you talk about quality of player, I think Cameroon have a much higher quality of player than DR Congo. Again, Zembo Ngisa, one of the best players in Serie A. Carlos Balaba, one of the hottest prospects in the Premier League. That's your double pivot. Brian Mbeumo, the current, I think, Premier League player of the month, in great form for Manchester United. Aboubakar is back. Throw whoever you want on the left wing or as a third midfielder, whether it's Arthur Avoum from Lorient, a young combative midfielder, Martin Ongla, whoever you want is going to be really, really good. So I've said it time and time again, but I think Cameroon have one of the best squads on the African continent. DR Congo, like Cameroon, I think they had some bad timing in the September and October windows, because that was the beginning of the new season. Chancellor Mbamba hadn't played club football in a year and change. Yohan Wissa had, concluded his transfer after he was holding out, so he wasn't really fit. And then they have to go play against Senegal, and you could see that the team physically are extremely tired. So despite their 2-0 lead in the first half, they end up giving it up, I think, mostly because of physical fitness. I'm not saying they played the perfect tactical match as well, but physical fitness, I think timing played a big role in them losing to Senegal, as well as things like football heritage, mental strength, and so on and so forth. But it seems like besides that match, there's no shame to losing at Senegal, even at home, even with the 2-0 lead. But besides that match, DR Congo have been practically flawless since the last African Cup of Nations. So I do think, they're a function. They're not a dysfunctional team. They are a functional team. Players are performing well in their leagues. If you talk about Chancel Ndamba, now he's returned to fitness. He's returned to form. I think he's played approximately 10 matches for Lille, and alongside Aïssa Mondi, actually, for the Algerian center half, they put it together very, very good defensive performances, and they've been shutting out a lot of teams. Noah Sadiki has been a very, very promising midfielder in the Premier League for Sunderland, who are, I think, top 4 at the moment in the Premier League. Fiston Mayele, of course, has been in great form for the last 2-3 months. Aaron Wan-Bissaka has been playing good football for, I always forget who he's playing for at the moment. I think it's West Ham United. So I really do think that in terms of fitness and form, DR Congo are in a much better position than they were even 5-6 weeks ago. They have a new player named Mario Stroikens, 21 years old, at Anderlecht. He's a player that was playing senior football at the age of 17 years old in Belgium, and it was considered one of the hottest Belgian prospects. Cooled down a little bit, but still, I think, a very good player. Plays in that number 10 role. And again, the kind of player that Congo probably need and are looking for, that can provide a little bit of creativity in the final third that they were lacking, perhaps. And so I'm very excited to see how he does. And I think he's going to start as, make his senior debut and talk about a baptism of fire, but do it immediately. So it's going to be interesting to really keep an eye on that as well. Now here, it's going to be a very, very even match, in my opinion. These teams, they play the same formations. Yes, Cameroon have a little bit more quality on paper, but they're also much more dysfunctional. And I think that basically evens itself out. It's also a derby, Central African derby. These are two sides that know each other very, very well. I think teams playing in these playoffs are going to be very risk averse. They're going to be very scared to make mistakes. And that's why I think that this match is going to go to extra time and penalties. And something tells me, like, when you go to penalties and extra time, I just think karma is going to reward the team that does the little things well, the preparation well, Talk about, like, I could see it, something as stupid as this. Mark Brice's assistant coach does not get accreditation from the Cameroonian Federation. Mark Brice's assistant coach is the one that takes care of all the training sessions, puts in place all the tactics. He's not on the bench. He has to go sit in the stands. We go to penalty shootouts. I'm not saying they're going to be this poorly, prepared, but if he's in the stands and maybe he doesn't prepare the penalty shootouts correctly, or he can't communicate that to the coaching staff. Maybe he can't make the in-game adjustments as well as DR Congo does. And again, I do think that if there's going to be a difference in this match, it's going to come late in the match. So I do think that DR Congo are the more functional side, and I think that's going to give them the slight advantage the further this game goes on, if it remains a draw. And that's why I think I'm going to take DR Congo by a single goal or in penalty shootouts. DR Congo and Nigeria, in my opinion, will be advancing to the final of the Confederation playoffs. So yeah, let me know who you're looking forward to watching. If you share this analysis, or if you have other points to make, please leave them in the comments below. Again, please subscribe, please comment, please like, because there's so much football to talk about. Not only do we have the final in a few days, not only are we going to be, so we're going to be reviewing these matches, we're going to be previewing the final. Fingers crossed. I'm very, very confident that we're going to have a Rulani Mokoena interview coming up, or at least recorded in the next few days, and then coming out probably after the first match day of the CAF Champions League. And then we're straight into team previews. I'm going to try to do 24 team previews for all 24 teams of the African Cup of Nations. So please keep it locked in. Please subscribe. Please like. Please leave a comment. And I'll speak to you all very soon. Peace.